Yeah. So, I mean, you could have a house that actually has the entity in it, and they are, that makes sense because, even the cat we have now, as you can tell, we're a dog and cat lover family, that will be staring off at stuff and watching like it's something is moving, and I'm watching the cat's head just follow something that's not there.
Yeah, and we get a lot of reports of that. And sometimes it's a little tough to tell, though. Just one quick story. We were in another city area, I think it was Reading, Pennsylvania, where the family said about 2:30 to 3 o'clock, almost every single night, our two dogs go nuts. And they're staring at a certain area of the room, and they're growling, they're barking, howling, they're just crazy. And, they were reporting some other activity as well, but they were convinced their dogs were sensing some kind of spirit coming in every night about 2:30 to 3 o'clock. So we went and did an investigation, and we had a lot of audio recorders out, and, these audio recorders can pick up quite a lot that the human ear can't even. And we go and do our review later on, and what we found sounded like the typical chains that you would see in TV shows, ghost tagging chains. It was this really weird, crazy chain sound. And we're like, wow, that's nuts. What is that? So we went back to the client's house and we played it for them, and they're like, boy, I have no idea. And it took a little while, but what we actually figured out, 2 blocks away, there was a VFW that every night would go out and drop their glass bottles into a big dumpster for recycling. And the dogs were picking it up. Nobody else could hear it, but they can hear that 2 blocks away, and that's what it was. So that was a good case where we like to separate the normal from the paranormal because there's something I call the ghost effect. If somebody's got a really vivid experience or a bunch of experiences over time, they become almost instantly programmed that they have a ghost, and any weird activity in the house is caused by a ghost. So, you might have some paranormal activity, but then, a picture frame falls over and the ghost did it, or the light flickers, the ghost did it. So we try to separate normal stuff from paranormal. So in a case like that, it was perfect. So at 2:30 at night, when the dogs go nuts, they know that has nothing to do with a ghost now. That's something normal.
Well, that would be a big relief. Now, I got one last story. My grandmother and grandfather, when I was a kid, they moved from Whidbey Island up here in Washington to White Center in the state of Washington, a little town. They rented a house, and they were, they were there maybe about a year or maybe a little longer. And my grandmother would come over to our house like every weekend and, spend the day. And she would say like things were moving in the kitchen, weird smells, noises and stuff like that. And it got so bad after about a year, they didn't renew their lease in the house they rented, and they moved into another house. But right after that, it was in the newspaper that I guess the next person who bought or rented the house, whatever, they went down underneath the house in the crawl space, and they found remains of a body. Well, it turned out the owner of the house killed his wife and had her down underneath the house in the crawl space.
So that's certainly something you don't want to find moving into a new house.
Well, it was an old house, but you going into it. Now, have you ever ran into anything like that at all? Could hauntings be because of that too, or something like that?
A couple cases do pop out. We had a case where the family had a big. They just moved into this house, and over the course of a couple months, they were out in the backyard cleaning up some stuff, and there was already this huge pile of like rubble and brush that someone else had cleaned up. And their backyard backed up to a very, very old cemetery and a very old church beyond that. And they discovered near this big pile 2 bones, and one looked like a femur bone and one looked like a human pelvis. And they kind of freaked out, thought it was human from doing police work. We find a lot of bones that look like human skeletons that turn out to be bare. But they were pretty convinced they were human bones, and they were having all this activity after that. One of their friends actually took this pelvis bone, crushed it up, and threw it into the storm drain in front of their house. And they said activity just went nuts after that in the house. And we went out and we got the bone that was left and took that to a forensic anthropologist at a local university. And they actually did say, yep, you got a human bone there.
Oh, wow.
So we went back and did an investigation. And in fact, that was the only case I've had to call the coroner's office on. You know, you find human remains, you got to contact the coroner's office. But being that there was a very old cemetery, we had also found out through a local historian that the property lines had moved over 100 years, and odds are the property could have been part of the cemetery 100 years ago. So we brought Virginia, our medium, in, and almost instantly she said, she goes, I feel like there's like a lot of death here. There's bodies under the ground. And she starts to shake a lot when she picks up bodies, either in a property or, you know, under the ground. And she looks at us and says, you know, are there people buried here in their backyard? And I'm like, not that I know of. So we called in a ground penetrating radar team, and they actually verified that there were bodies in the backyard as close as 20 feet to the house.
Oh my God.
And again, what we found out through this historian, when the property lines changed and this house was bought, the backyard was sort of extended. But when people died who belonged to the church, they were buried closer to the church with bigger stones. The less affluent you were, the smaller the stones got, the farther away from the church you got. And there were a lot of unclaimed bodies and people who just had no money. Well, they got unmarked graves at the very edge of the cemetery, which would have been the backyard. So these people literally, almost like poltergeist, built on a graveyard and had bodies right in their backyard. And they went and, sort of desecrated one of the bones of a body that belonged there. And what we believe, they were so many groundhog holes that were there that it probably got dug up from a groundhog. Because, you know, if you go back, I think the cemetery was almost the early 1700s, late 1600s. It was an old church. They would have been using a wood casket at that time. And even if they used that for some of these unclaimed bodies, I don't know. But the graves probably weren't as deep either. So our guess is that a groundhog had dug it up, and we ended up doing a ceremony there with a priest to rebury the bone, and the coroner's office was fine with that.
I mean, I wonder legally, what if you bought a house and you find out you had a bunch of bodies in the yard? I would be, well, you know, I know in Washington State you have to disclose anything like that, or if there was a killing in the house, you have to disclose that. But yeah. I mean, from the standpoint, how would you feel, or I would feel, if all of a sudden you find out there's like 10, 5, 20 bodies laying on your property? You go out there in the backyard and have a barbecue. I mean, I would feel so, I don't even feel, I feel uncomfortable even walking in the cemetery, let alone have the cemetery on my property. I mean, aren't they?
Even though they were unmarked graves, I mean, it is kind of sacred ground. So that was one of the problems that we felt was occurring. That there was drug use within this family, and they were having these parties out in the backyard. And that's, one of the things our medium felt was, hey, listen, you guys are on sacred land here. There's a lot of bad language, a lot of drug use. You guys need to lighten up with that stuff out there, or you're going to be pulling a lot more stuff back in here that, people aren't happy with what you're doing here. But, after we did the reburial of the bone, and we actually did a rite of exorcism with the priest through the house, and Virginia did her work to release the people she felt were there. They didn't report any activity after that. So what they did party-wise going forward, I don't know, but they haven't reported any extracurricular activity after that.
Oh, yeah. Well, that sounds like probably one of the most interesting cases you have, probably done, isn't it?
Yeah, without a doubt. Yes, everything from bodies in the backyard, ground penetrating radar, forensic labs, coroner's office. It was a pretty wild case.
Yeah, somebody just texted me through Facebook. Was it more than 5 bodies? They wanted to know.
Yes, I'd say it was probably less than 12. I can't remember the exact amount, and the the radar team did not scan the whole entire yard. They just did an area kind of up close to the house, and we just kind of assumed the closer to the cemetery you got, there was probably more bodies back there. But I think they came up with 9 in the area closer to the house.
Oh, wow. Now, how long ago was that, out of curiosity?
I think that was 2011. Okay. 2010, 2011.
Now, have you ever had any clients you went and investigated on their house or business or whatever and had to call you back afterwards and said, hey, things are starting in again or anything like that?
I think there were a few cases that we had that when we left, we knew there was probably going to be a little bit of continuing activity, that we told them if it does start back up, give us a call. And in that case, generally in one night we can go out and resolve a case. There are certain cases that it may take a little bit of time, and Virginia will say, we need to get the psychic team we have a whole bunch of additional resources that can go out together and work on resolving it. So a couple times we kind of knew we were going back. There were other cases that we were able to cleanse the house, but the problem was you have, even young kids are tough, that they might be very psychically open themselves and are attracting things, and they don't know how to do anything with the abilities that they do have. So a couple times we've had to go back for sort of a new haunting because the person in the house would be somewhere and something would kind of connect with them or attach to them because, if you're a spirit and you're kind of by yourself and you realize somebody could see or hear you, maybe you want to kind of communicate or connect with that person, so they end up bringing somebody home. We've had a few cases like that.
Oh, wow. Now, how many people are actually in your group?
I think we have 12 or 13. We have Virginia's our main psychic medium, Virginia Centrillo, but we have 2 other mediums, Cheryl and Michelle, that kind of back up Virginia if she needs help or if she's not available or if we're doing 2 cases at one time. They'll come out and help. And then we have, I think it's another 9 or 10 actual investigators that go out. Typically on any case, we're generally doing no more than 4 to 5 people on a team, though. Oh, wow. Now, how do people find you? People can find us through our website. It's the Pennsylvania Paranormal Association, and the website is theppa.net. Okay, now go ahead. People want to see a lot of these cases that I'm referring to. A lot of them are posted under there. We have a case files link at the top of the page, and any physical evidence that we get, we try to put up there, unless the client requests nothing be posted. That Upper Darby case where I mentioned the quarters being thrown, you could go on there and look for Upper Darby, and I think we have 2 links up there for 2 nights that we captured some pretty decent evidence. You could see the quarters being dropped out of thin air or thrown across the room. Now, have you ever followed up? Are they still getting quarters dropped? I'm sorry? Have you ever followed that case up? Are they still getting quarters dropped from thin air? No, actually, they are now living down in Florida, and I was just there about a week ago and stopped in to see them. So we remain friends, but no, we were able to knock down probably a good, I'll say about 80% of the activity in the home. There was some follow-up stuff that we needed the client himself to do because there was some voodoo that was done to him. So that was a very personal thing that he needed to do, and we kind of asked him to get together. He was Catholic, so we had a priest that wanted to work with him, and also a white voodoo church that also said that they can disconnect what was going on with him, and he was hesitant to work with either of them, so a little bit of the activity remained. But a lot of it we were able to stop, and they ended up basically had nothing to do with the haunting, but moved to Florida for other reasons, and we kept in touch, and they have absolutely no activity going on in their new home there. So things are good for them. Hopefully the new homeowners don't have anything going on, but we haven't heard anything about that.
Well, look at all the beer money they could